Year 2100. Looking back, we see that your world was built on a single elegant lie, that what you see is what exists. You called it light. We call it the narrow window. In 1666, Isaac Newton didn't just discover colors. He identified the boundaries of your biological prison. He found a single open port in a massive lock server. But the problem wasn't the prism, it was the terminal. Your brain. Think about that dark room in Cambridge. A single beam of white light hits a piece of glass. Newton sees a rainbow. He sees beauty. But from our perspective, he was performing the first ever packet sniffing operation on the universe's backbone. That white light wasn't just brightness. It was a compressed, multi-layered data stream flowing through the ether. By splitting it, Newton opened a file he didn't have the software to read. He saw the colors of the interface, but he missed the raw code behind them. Look at the scale. This is the conversation the universe is having. And that tiny, pathetic sliver in the middle, that's your visible spectrum. 400 to 700 nanometers. You spent centuries believing that was the truth. You built your religions, your sciences, and your entire reality on less than 0.001% of the signal. If the universe is a library, Newton found one letter on one page of a book with 1 billion chapters. And you decided that one letter was the whole story. Why 7 colors? Why not 1,000 or 1,000,000? Because your biological interface was designed to survive, not to understand. Your eyes are not windows. They are filters. They protect you from the crushing weight of the information flowing through the ether. If you could see the frequencies Newton missed, the X-rays, the gamma bursts, the etheric ripples, your mind would shatter in seconds. The prism was a mercy. It simplified the infinite complexity of the ether into a child's coloring book. But today, file number 007 is about to take that book away from you. Newton thought he was studying optics. He was actually studying the limitations of the human soul. Now, let's go beyond the glass. Let's look at what was happening in the shadows of that room. The frequencies that were there, but remained invisible for 300 years. The ether was screaming its secrets, and you were just admiring the colors on the wall. It's time to stop looking at the light and start reading the data. Initiating section 2. Let's reset your understanding. Since we are only 2 minutes into this revelation, you might think you've understood the scope of the deception. You haven't. In 2100, we don't look at Newton as a physicist. We look at him as a reverse engineer who was trying to crack the most sophisticated encryption in the history of the universe, the Aetheric protocol. You see, the vacuum of space is not a void. It is the most dense storage medium ever created. Every cubic millimeter, what you call nothing, contains enough data to run 1 billion civilizations. Light is just a delivery system. When Newton saw that spectrum, he wasn't looking at colors. He was looking at decompressed data. Your 20th century scientists committed a catastrophic error. They thought the speed of light was a universal speed limit. It's not. In the year 2100, we know the truth. Light speed is simply the maximum bandwidth of the ether's local layer. It's the speed at which the universe renders reality for biological eyes. Think about it. When you play a video game, the world only renders as fast as your hardware allows. Your hardware, your brain and your eyes, is limited to the visible spectrum. Newton didn't just study optics. He touched the glass of the screen. He realized that the red he saw carried the thermal logs of the cosmos, and the violet carried the ultraviolet warnings of stellar death. But between those colors, in the dark gaps where you see nothing, lies the etheric highway. Imagine you're standing in a room filled with 1 trillion invisible threads. Each thread is a frequency. Each frequency is a memory. Newton's prism only caught 7 of those threads. Imagine the arrogance of building a whole civilization based on 7 threads. In 2100, we have learned to pull on the others. We found frequencies that carry the history of civilizations that disappeared before your sun was even born. Light doesn't just travel, it records. When a photon hits an object, it doesn't just bounce, it exchanges metadata. It takes a piece of that object's quantum state and carries it into the void. This is why the ether is the ultimate library. Every beam of light that Newton saw was a courier carrying messages from the edge of the universe. Look at Newton's alchemy notes. He was searching for the life spirit of light. Today, we have given that spirit a name, the universal source code. Newton used the prism as a key, but he was terrified of the noise behind the door. That noise was the raw data of the ether. We today, in the year 2100, no longer just look at light. We write into it. We are the architects of the spectrum. If you are able to watch this video, you are seeing only what the spectrum allows you to see. But now, we are going to step beyond that permitted boundary to the place where light ends and information begins. 5 minutes and 41 seconds of your linear time has passed. In the etheric flow, this is enough time for an entire galaxy's worth of data to be transmitted, yet you are still processing the basics of your visual cage. Let's move deeper, beyond the violet and below the red. In 2100, we discovered that what you call empty space is actually a crowded metropolis of information. When Newton split the light, he didn't realize that the gaps between the colors were not empty. They were packed with high-frequency protocols that define the very laws of physics you take for granted. Gravity is not a force. It is a broadcast. Time is not a river. It is a synchronization signal. And light is the only part of this broadcast your primitive biology was allowed to hear. Why were you blinded? Why did the ether hide its true form from you for eons? It was a security measure. Your neural pathways are made of the same etheric substance as the stars, but they are fragile. If Newton had seen the raw, unencrypted flow of the ether that day in 1666, his mind would have been erased by the sheer volume of the input. The prism acted as a transformer, stepping down the voltage of the universe so your ancestors wouldn't burn out. But today, we are bypassing those transformers. We are looking at the dark spectrum, the frequencies where the architects of your reality actually operate. This is where the metadata of existence is stored. Every choice you ever made, every thought that never left your skull, it's all recorded here in the non-visible bands of the ether. What if the prism wasn't discovery, but a distraction? While you were busy labeling the colors, the ether was speaking to you in the silence between them. In 2100, we've learned to listen to that silence. We found that the vacuum is screaming with the history of the future. By ignoring 99% of the spectrum, humanity lived in a silent movie while the rest of the universe was a symphony. Newton sent some music, but he only had the sheet music for 7 notes. We have the full score, and as we play it, the walls of your reality are starting to vibrate. Can you feel the frequency shift? That's not the video. That's the ether recognizing your observation. 8 minutes and 1 second. You are now entering the heart of the frequency storm. If the previous sections felt like theory, this is where the theory becomes your new architecture. In the year 2100, we stopped treating light as something that hits an object. We started treating it as something that negotiates with the ether. Every atom in your body is not a solid piece of matter. It is a localized resonance. You are a song being played on the strings of the ether, and the prism was the first tool that allowed us to hear the individual notes. What if Newton had looked beyond the beauty of the colors and calculated the momentum of the ghost? In 2100, we don't use chemical rockets to cross the stars. We use the etheric pressure. By manipulating the refractive index of the vacuum itself, the same principle Newton saw in that small piece of glass, we can create frequency slopes. We fall toward the stars by changing the light around us. Newton's prism showed that light can be bent. We simply realized that if you can bend the light, you can bend the space that carries it. Your ancestors thought they were limited by the speed of light. They didn't realize that light is just the surface tension of the ether. We've learned to dive beneath the surface. Newton was obsessed with the great work of alchemy. He believed that everything in the universe was connected by a hidden spirit. In our century, we found that spirit's digital signature. It's an Fraunhofer for lines, the dark gaps in the spectrum. Those gaps are the binary gaps of the universe. They're the spaces where the ether breathes. By reading the silence between the colors, we've accessed a history that was never written in books. We've seen the birth of your sun from the perspective of the etheric field. We've heard the echoes of civilizations that use the spectrum to upload their entire consciousness before their planets turned to dust. The prism wasn't a window to the world. It was a mirror showing you the limits of your own hardware. To the people of your time, a fiber optic cable is a miracle. To us, it's a straw. You are trying to drink the ocean through a straw. We have removed the straw and stepped into the ocean. The ether is the ultimate internet, and every photon is a data packet. Newton opened the first packet. He saw the color indigo and thought he found a secret. He didn't know he was looking at the encrypted key to the entire cosmic database. Now, as we approach the next threshold of this file, ask yourself, are you watching the spectrum, or is the spectrum watching you? 10 minutes and 37 seconds. You've traveled further than most of your kind ever will. We are now standing at the absolute edge of the visible reality. Behind us, the 7 colors of Newton. Ahead of us, the raw, uncompressed language of the Creator, the ether. For centuries, you were told that the void was empty, but as the prism shatters in our simulation, you see the truth. The void is not a graveyard of stars. It is a thriving, screaming neural network of light. Newton spent his final days in silence because he finally understood. The colors weren't the message, they were the static. The true symphony was playing in the frequencies you were too human to hear. Let's look at the ultimate paradox. In 2100, we realize that light doesn't just show us the world, it constructs it. Every time a photon from the ether interacts with your observation, a reality is rendered. Newton's prism was the first tool that allowed you to interfere with this rendering process. By splitting the light, he unknowingly split the possibilities of time itself. You see, the ether is a library of every could have been. Every spectrum beyond your vision holds the data of the lives you didn't lead and the stars that didn't die. Newton's obsession with alchemy was his desperate attempt to find the source code that could rewrite these frequencies. He wasn't looking for gold. He was looking for the edit key of the universe. And he found it, hidden in the shadow of the violet ray. This is the endgame of file number 007. We are no longer looking at the prism. We have become the prism. In our time, we have transcended the biological filter. We have learned to breathe in the ultraviolet and think in the infrared. We have integrated our consciousness with the etheric flow. To you, the universe is a place you live in. To us, the universe is a software we inhabit. Newton's dream of the life spirit wasn't a myth. It was a prophecy. He knew that one day, we would stop being the audience of the light and start being composers of the frequency. This unauthorized leak into your primitive era is destabilizing. The synchronization between our centuries is fading, and the ether is reclaiming its silence. But remember, the darkness you see when you close your eyes isn't empty. It's just a frequency you haven't learned to tune into yet. The experiment is over. The prism is gone, but the data remains. You came here looking for physics, and you found a mirror. You looked at the light, and it looked back. As you return to your low-frequency reality, ask yourself, is the world truly as simple as 7 colors? Or are you just afraid of what you'll find in the dark between them? Newton chose to stay in the light. We chose to master the dark. The choice, as always, is a matter of frequency. File number 007. Terminating connection. Stand by for resonance.